Hello, and welcome to episode 191, Stretto, of Jung at Harp. Today, I'm here without my partner, Kathleen. Kathleen is at something, I don't know what, but she's not able to be here today. And rather than just skip the week, I thought I would come and hopefully you can hear what I'm saying. I'd like to begin this all over again. Hello, and welcome to Jung at Harp, episode 191, Stretto. When music imitates life, or is it life imitating music? I'm Deborah Henson-Conant, also known as Deborah, also known as DHC, and I come here every week, almost every week, and usually with Kathleen Wiley, who is a Jungian psychoanalyst. I am a composer and a performer and a mentor and educator, and both Kathleen and I play the harp, and so we call this Jung at Harp. And each week we come with a question. And the question should have been this week, what is Stretto? Not just Stretto. And we explore it through conversation. And we're on a specific kind of site that will allow us to see your comments depending on where you're commenting in from. And so that lets you into the conversation as well. And this conversation all started with Kathleen and I, and in her car when she was hosting me for a concert series. And we started a conversation and enjoyed that conversation so much, a conversation of exploration and discovery, that we wanted to keep having that conversation. Last week, we got an email from somebody who said they really enjoyed Jung at Harp and wished that there was more harp playing. So I want to show you something that I discovered this week. And hopefully you'll be able to hear what I'm doing and kind of see what I'm doing. So I'm creating a fake book for holiday songs. So I teach people how to improvise. I teach harpists how to improvise. And there are many, many, many different ways to improvise. You can improvise on themes. You can have free improvisation. You can have meditative improvisation. You can have improvisation with stories. There's all kinds of different kinds of improvisation. But one of the kinds that I love to teach at this time of year, I put it in the category of structure is freedom. Now, structure can confine us if we feel that we need to do something perfectly, and structure can give us a foundation, a framework, a support for creative freedom. So that's what I'm exploring, and I'm exploring it with harpists and anybody else who wants to come in a specific realm. So there is a specific skill that you can learn in music that's called reading lead sheets. And it's all about being able to read music in a very different way, where all the music isn't written out and you don't have to do it right, but just a very little part of the music is written, and then you get to explore it and improvise on it. And this also fits within a larger structure in which you present the theme of the music, then you explore it, and then you express it again. I was teaching this, so I've been creating this fake book. It's a book full of Christmas and Hanukkah and Advent songs, just their melodies and the chords. And by the way, since I can't tell how well I'm being heard, if you have the ability to hit, to comment, and if you would let me know, am I being heard? Can you hear the harp as well? So I've created this fake book, and I was teaching one of the songs in it, and one of this yesterday. And one of the songs in it is they're all really interesting when you take them apart, when you start taking these tunes apart and trying to find this absolute simplest way to play them. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to break them down to their simplest form so that they're easy to play, so that people can get access to playing them quickly. And then people can start to expand them creatively in their own way. And I just want to say that this impulse for me, okay, all sounds good. Okay, great. Thank you, Lori and Rose. Thank you. Great. That's great. This all comes from sort of two sides of me, and this is where it fits together with Jung. I am not a Jungian scholar. But I did go, and I'll read a little bit later, I did go to AI to ask about this one concept that I'm going to be talking about and how Jung might look at that, since Kathleen isn't here today. And so she can't bring her perspective, which is extremely unique as both a musician and also a Jungian psychoanalyst. I am clear. Yay. Beautiful. So as I was creating the simplification of so many of these tunes in this fake book, I was looking at one particular tune, which is called Carol of the Bells. And I apologize for anybody who's like, but wait a minute, it's Halloween. Why are we going to? And I could do, maybe I'll do a Halloween song later at the end. But I want to look at this because there's a concept that I was teaching yesterday called Stretto. And it is a concept, when I looked it up, it comes out of fugues, and it is a concept in which things are going along melodically, basically normally, and then things start to pile up on top of each other. And it creates this sense of stress as it begins to stretto more and more, and then it often resolves or opens up or blooms back into the melody. So some very interesting things were happening with this particular tune, and so I want to look at it emotionally. So this tune is called Carol of the Bells, and you're probably familiar with it. It's got a melody, which isn't so much a melody as a motif. So just think about that. The fact that a melody usually, there is a melody later on, something like this. Which is kind of act like a counter melody. But here is a song that is primarily known for two musical aspects and not necessarily a melody. So this is a motif. It's a melody too. But it is, you know the song as soon as you hear it, but what makes it identifiable is a couple of things. Well, I'm curious of what you think. A couple of things. One is, here we have this theme or motif, and then we know it's going to go up a third, and then it will be in harmony. It will kind of be in harmony with itself. And then it does something, it does this melody, comes up here, comes down in a scale. Maybe it repeats. I would repeat it. Then it does something else really interesting, which is, and you'll see me do this. I'm just raising two of the notes of the scale. It comes and it plays a melodic phrase. Within that one thing is all of the history of the melodic minor scale. Just in that we're playing in A minor, we're playing in a minor scale. And that minor scale is like this. But in this case, it's going. So it's actually altered itself to take on the characteristics of the major scale. And I'm not going to go into all of this. I'm just asking you to think about music as just kind of think about these as metaphors, that this is identifiable by the way it moves. But there's another aspect to how it works as well, is that it is part of it that there is this, what's called a descending bass line. So it's really interesting in that the song is identifiable in part by the motif. It's identifiable by the fact that the motif repeats, and it's identifiable by the fact that it's got this technique connected to it, the technique of the descending bass line. and there's the rest of the song is like does this and it does it again and then it does this other thing and then it does this thing. The reason I was looking at the song was for the reason, wait a second, let's have some tea and let's think about those things for a moment. The reason I was thinking about these things in part was because I was creating these lead sheets, but I was also thinking, this is a problem. This is a technical problem. It is always a technical problem of this song with the harp, that this part of the tune is basically in a different key. When I'm doing this descending bass line, I'm using a G natural and an F natural. When I'm doing this part, I'm using an F sharp and an F and a G sharp. So why is that a problem? The harp is an unusual instrument in that it is a modulating instrument. There are very few modulating instruments where the entire instrument changes key. So when you're playing on a pedal harp, you'd literally have to shift the pedals for this part of the tune and this. And when you're playing on a lever harp, you can set the levers differently, but then you kind of have to think about it ahead of time. Or you'd be playing along, then I have to go like that. And so I was thinking, since my goal was to lower the bar of entry for harpists to be able to create holiday, to create music, to create an atmosphere, to be able to, you can call it be of service, be in performance mode, be able to improvise, be able to be present, to lower the bar of entry. And why was this important to me? And again, if you're joining me, usually Kathleen Wiley is here, and usually she would be presenting a Jungian side of this and what this might mean in terms of our psyche. But she's not able to be here today, but I wanted to show up anyway. So why is this concept important to me? Or I think it should be important to everybody. Why is it important that the bar to entry for musicians, for someone who wants to play music, that it be lowered, the bar to entry? And here is the answer for me. So I had two grandmothers, Edith and Anna. Anna was from Russia, and where art and to be a musician was this high calling. And the point of a musician was, if you were thinking about a musician, you would think about somebody on the stage or in the light or even in a home playing, and others were watching. So that was what a musician was like. Edith was Swedish. She was a farmer, and her philosophy about music was people have to sing and someone has to keep them together. And that is why you play music. Now, she was a very functional musician. She could play, whatever people needed to sing. If it was simple, she could play it because she saw music as a service and she saw it as a part of life. It was like anything else. It was like cooking. It was like, knowing how to milk a cow or whatever it is that you had to do. Being able to play music was a functional thing, because people have to sing. And I mean, that was her take on it. People need to sing. They need to hear music. Music needs to be in their lives. And when she grew up, there were no record players. And even so, I grew up, playing music when there was music that was needed. So this was the context in which I was looking at this tune. How do I make this tune that has this technical, like, oh God, every time I get there, I have to worry about this. How could I make it simple? And I discovered as I was exploring the tune that it was actually built in such a way, the tune was built in such a way that I could set these two levers, if you're playing the lever harp, which allows you to set different octaves in different ways. I could set these and play the whole song. I'm not playing those notes yet. I'm playing right next to them. Now I'm playing the third part. And now it's right there. And then we're back. We're back to the melody. Okay, so that's great for just playing the tune. And in the particular style of improv that I'm teaching right now, it usually starts with an introduction, a transition between silence and sound, and then the presentation of the melody, which I see as the identification of like, okay, this is what I'm doing. We all know what I'm doing. You know this song. I know this song. Or maybe I'm improvising and you don't know the song, but in this particular circumstance, like playing for people, being a musician playing at a holiday, part of it usually has to do with playing something identifiable. Simply, I don't know. I mean, that's where the psychology is. I wish Kathleen was here. There's something about people knowing what you're playing. So that's fine. We've identified a simple way to play this tune. You still have to deal with the technicality of how fast are you going to play it, because what's your technical ability? But still, we can get through the tune without having to fuss with anything. Now, here's where it gets interesting to me. Every technical problem, this is a technical problem, in its various solutions opens up new possibilities, especially new possibilities for improvisation. And as I say this aloud, wishing Kathleen were here, thinking, okay, so what does that say about every other part of my life? What does that say about, okay, everything that seems to be a problem, as you start to explore alternatives, as you start to explore what will open that up, new possibilities emerge. And I'm going to take a moment away from this now and just talk about a perfect situation like that I've been thinking about. I've been thinking about when I first started writing for orchestra. And I something I wanted to do. I envisioned it in my life. I had on one New Year's Eve, I envisioned I was on a stage. I was playing an instrument that I was wearing. It was a loud instrument. I was playing over a symphony orchestra. This was a vision that I had of my life. At that time, there was no electric harp that you could wear, and I couldn't write for symphony orchestra. And so I set about making that so, exploring what kinds of ways that there could be such a harp like this, which began to open up my relationship with the instrument itself and how I can engage with it and meet new people and end up having a relationship with Kanak harps, in which they actually took on my vision and made it their vision. And 15 years later is the DHC harp. That was one half of the vision. But the other half of the vision was writing for symphony orchestra. And so I just started and improvised, and I couldn't really read music that well, even at that point. I've never been a great reader. I've always been an improviser. Anyway, but I got a book called How to Orchestrate. And I told everybody I want to write for orchestra. And a conductor from the Boston Pop said, okay, so you want to play with us? And I was like, yes, but I want to write the music. I didn't just want to go and play jazz, because I was also at that point making a shift in my career from being a harpist who was known for playing jazz to being more of myself, which is a composer who's telling stories, utilizing all the different genres that I've been given, from classical to music theater to folk to jazz to aleatoric music to, all of them, to be able to use all those genres. And so I wanted to write the music myself. And he was like, okay. And so I did to the best of my ability. And it was maybe 2 weeks or 10 days before the first rehearsal. And I brought the score to him. And let me describe what that score looked like. So if you can imagine that a publisher says, oh, do you want to write a book? And the person says, yes, I can write a book. And they're like, okay, the publication date is this, when can you get the book to me? And the person is like, okay, yeah, I can get it 10 days ahead of time. And the publisher is like, yeah, cuts it kind of close, but okay. So the novelist or whatever comes in 10 days before, and they hand over the manuscript. And the person who's written it knows nothing about grammar. There's no punctuation. Things are spelled wrong, and it doesn't even, the page, it's not laid out in any kind of way that you can really understand it. So it's almost impossible for the publisher to even know the value of what's there because of how it's presented. And so there was this moment, because I knew what I wanted to hear. I thought I was writing that down, but the level at which it needed to be written was just so much beyond my experience or ability. And so here was this moment where this amazingly gracious person, instead of saying, are you freaking kidding me? Where he stopped and he said, well, this is not going to work. And so there was this moment where I think he was thinking, oh my God, what do we do? And I was thinking of many things. First, I wouldn't know how to fix this. There goes that dream. I guess that's not going to work. I've gotten to do many, many things in my life, but here's a dream that I just can't do. And so I think those were, and the third part for me was like, now they're just going to make me, play some of the pieces that they have in their repertoire, or like take 5, which would be wonderful. And, I'm sure I would enjoy playing them, but they aren't going to take me to the next level of me showing up in the world as myself versus the sort of jazz harpist persona that I'd created to feel safer sharing myself. So there was this moment, I don't know how long it lasted, where I'm sure he was thinking like, oh, what are we going to do here? And where I was just surrendering, like, okay, I give that up. I mean, that's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to ace this. This isn't going to happen. And out of that absolute surrender, giving up, this little teeny tiny voice just came through, and I heard myself asking something like, is there any way we can fix this? Or is there any way this situation can be transformed? Is there anything that can happen? And he said, well, yes, I know an arranger who can fix this. And I said, okay, could he do it in the amount of time that we have? And he said, yeah, he could do that. And I said, okay, how much would it cost? And he mentioned a price that was pretty much exactly what I was going to get paid. And I just said, okay, let's do it. And at that moment, 2 men moved into my house. It was the arranger and the copyist. And at that time, computers were very slow. So every time we had to save the music that was written out on the computer, it would take 20 minutes for it to just save. So we were literally working around the clock. 2 of us would be working at one time while one was sleeping, then the other one would go to sleep, and the other 2 would be working to get all these parts together. And it came to the last minute of the time for the rehearsal, and I went to the rehearsal and there was no music there because my team was still putting it together. And I called them and I was like, is this stuff coming? And they're like, well, we just called the taxi. It literally got there 2 minutes ahead of time. They put it on the stands. It was played. And the next thing that happened is, I mean, it sounded awful, but it didn't sound awful because it wasn't working. It sounded awful because I wasn't aware of what first rehearsals sounded like. And the first rehearsal has nothing to do with what it's going to sound like. It just sounds like people playing something, getting used to it, being new with it. But one of the things that happened is that we then went up to the conductor's room. We cut out a bunch of stuff so that it basically ended up back at exactly what I had written, but you could not see what I had written because of my unawareness of what the conventions of that. The musicians wouldn't have been able to read it because I didn't know the conventions of how to write it for them to read. Now, what is this all about? I mean, and so there was another rehearsal, the next rehearsal. Wow, it was like so much better. I think that was our last rehearsal. And in the concert, it was amazing and ended up getting just this great review that shifted my whole life. My whole life changed. And I made that shift, started to make that shift from being a harpist to a jazz harpist, to start to make the shift to be myself. This will come back to this. And this came out of a technical impasse where I could no longer use the skills that I had and the experience that I had. It was no longer enough to get over this divide, and something different had to happen. And that impasse became it became the factor for transformation. And I just am so grateful for that conductor, for his, just being calm. I don't know what was happening inside him at that moment. It must have been awful. And then the surrender, and then that small voice that asked that one question. And that question, I didn't realize it until just now, but that question in each of the two parts of this story, of this vision that I had, having a harp, an electric harp I could wear so that I could soar over the orchestra when no harp like that existed, and that there were orchestrations that were mine, which didn't exist. And in each of these stories, there was a moment of impasse. So the story in the second one, as the harp was being built, I described what I wanted, and the most visionary harp builder in the world, Joël Garnier, said, I will build this for you. And he came up with a prototype, and we were all like, this is the harp of the future. Everyone's going to want to play this. And so I kept playing it, waiting for everybody, and nobody else was really getting, what you could do with this instrument, what the possibilities were. Meanwhile, there were technical problems with it, in the structure, and Kamek, the harp company, was trying to fix those technical problems. And every time they fixed a problem, it made the harp heavier. And so it got so heavy that there was one performance. I had gone over to France. They'd given me the harp to play. I went and played, and I was in pain because the harp was so heavy. And after the show, there we were standing again. I was standing with, I didn't realize exactly how parallel these were. I was standing with Jacques, the protege of Joël, because Joël had left the planet at that point. And I said to Jacques, this isn't my TEDx talk. You can see this whole story, but the parallel of these two moments, when I said to him, this can't work, this is just too heavy, I can't do it. And he said, well, we love building this for you, but nobody else is buying it. I mean, we can't afford to keep investing in the development of this when really just one person is playing it. And I had been thinking a lot about that. And had been thinking about how the bicycle frame is very much like a harp frame. And I was thinking, we were in France, there's a Tour de France. I mean, certainly there's bike builders there. And so in this, again, this moment of silence, and I just said, well, what about the bike builders? Can you go to the bike builders and can you, I mean, look, it's the same thing as the frame. It's just this one has strings and that one has pedals and wheels. And that's what they did. And that was the transformation. So I'm saying all of this, and then I want to pull up what some of you are saying. I'm saying all of this to say that when it's sort of a technical problem or a technical impasse happens, it can become the opportunity for creative exploration and for creative breakthrough. And I want to show you my little experience with this tune that happened a couple days ago, which is nowhere near as big as the ones in those other stories in life. But I think this is happening all the time. So let me just see what you guys are saying. So Lori is saying, we hear that a problem or challenge is an opportunity for growth. When we're facing challenges in life, it can be difficult to see the opportunity over the challenge. I agree. I wish if Kathleen was here, and maybe we can talk about this next week, I'm sure she would have so much insight into this. If I were to look at each of these situations, in the first one, there was surrender. I surrendered to, like, there goes my dream. That's over. That's not going to happen. I let it go. I guess that's one of those things that's just not going to happen in my life. Complete surrender. I had no idea there was another question coming through. In the second situation, where I had been thinking about this already, I'd already been mentioning it, but I felt like, who am I to tell the harp company how to build a harp? You know, like, they did it because I couldn't do it. But I could, for whatever reason, I was able to see a relationship. I was able to draw a relationship between an impasse, an impossible situation, and something that had already been solved, but just didn't look like it was the solution for this. And and that's not something that he saw, even though it seemed obvious to me. And one of the reasons I hadn't said anything about it is because I thought, well, I mean, they've already thought of that, of course. So, as Lori says, we hear that a problem or challenge is an opportunity for growth, but when we're facing challenges in life, it can be difficult to see the opportunity over the challenge. I absolutely agree. And I wish I was here with a solution. I'm not. I'm here. I mean, maybe you'll see a solution when I have to do it quickly because we're coming to the end of our time. I'll show you the solutions that I came to, and maybe it will suggest something. And Lori says, Kathleen talks about holding opposites within us in terms of feelings. Okay, great. So when we can hold the opposite, a third possibility grows and we are transformed. I'm not saying it's clear. Well, you're saying it super clearly. And what I'm loving is that in Kathleen's absence, Kathleen is coming into this through you. And you're right. She does talk about holding the opposites, and a third possibility grows and we're transformed. This is very clear. All right. Wow. I love it. And what this says to me is it's not for us to figure out at that moment. It's for us to hold those two opposites and allow the third possibility to grow, in which we are transformed. And this is what I think I'm constantly saying, I'm avoiding saying harping on, in the academy, which is taking on a simple practice allows us to start discovering those things. And what I'm hearing right now in my head, based on what you said, holding the opposites, one of the things that I ask people to do when when they go through this process of playing from a lead sheet, is I'm asking them to hold two opposite things, or it's opposite from what they think. One is, I don't have the technical ability to play the way I want to. And the other is, if I play at my technical ability, if I embrace the beauty of what I can do, I will be able to have full creative expression. In other words, my creative expression is not dependent on my technical skills. Sorry, just like in the case of playing with the Boston Pops, it was my technical ability was at a completely inept level. It was not possible for me to transform at that moment. But when I expanded to be 3 people instead of 1, and actually 4, because it was Ron Feldman, who, the conductor, who had the knowledge that the technical problem that I had there was a solution potentially, and then was able to connect me with that solution. Same like apparently I did with Kamek. I saw that there was already a solution out there, connected the two, and that's what made the difference in the harp. So that was the third possibility. It happened in community in each of these cases. And Lori's saying, the third possibility can show up, we just don't like the discomfort. Correct. And I had pretty much avoided playing this tune, even though I think it's lovely, because I was like, oh, if I try to improvise on this, it's just going to be such a hassle to deal with this. And then they need to be down when I'm going down, and they need to be up when I'm going up. But here's what I discovered, that there were several different ways to improvise on this tune. And I was able to suggest these not just to members of the Academy, but also to actually put it into the fake book so that other people could see it. And what does this mean to me when I say that I could improvise on it, is that when I'm playing the melody, I am at service of the melody. It's all about clarity, and can people hear it, because that's what helps them know, oh, I know that, and that has a certain feeling. When I'm improvising, I want freedom, but I want structure for that freedom. So one of the structures that I discovered, well, it was right there. You, of course, you can always continue. I'm avoiding those 2 notes right here. I'm using that descending bass line. And then I discovered, but I can then grab one of those notes, and it starts sounding a little bit more Chopin-esque. If I grab it and come up. So I discovered that, and then I started exploring, like, what if I use this, and then I come back up. So I'm going if I can even do it twice times. So I'm playing A minor down here. So I made up a sequence: A minor, G, F, G, A minor, G, F, G, A. So now I have something that's like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 5, 2, 6, 2, 3, 7, 2, 3, 8, 2, 3, 9, 2, 3, 2, 3, 11, 2, 3, 12, 2, 3, 13, and 14, and 15, and 16. Now I have a 16-bar phrase that's very easy to play and to improvise with. I don't have to worry. The only thing I have to think about there is that how I'm going to approach that G sharp. But my goal is, how do I have freedom? How does the structure give me freedom? So I discovered that structure, and then I discovered another one. And then I was like, well, what if I could use these notes? Now I'm using an even simpler improv structure, which is just A, C, E, and then take the top two notes down. Okay, but what I really wanted to talk about today in my last, it's 10. Well, I'm going to say it anyway. Stretto. What I discovered by doing this as well is that when I come here, I can repeat that. So now what I have all kinds of improv that I can do with it. And then I can also use this one technically problematic part of the tune, this one. Well, and I can actually create a stretto, something in which it starts kind of tumbling over itself, getting more and more intense. Now it starts getting shorter. And back. And now I have all the elements that I can play with, presenting the tune, taking the tune apart into its component parts to play with it. And by addressing this technical issue and playing with it, I was actually able to enjoy creating a sense of emotional build out of the one thing that had originally created the reason, like, I don't want to play this tune. So thus have I described this as Stretto. And I'm going to pull Lori's final comment up and then off to a meeting. Lori says, your story reminds me of Kathleen's holding opposites. If we can sit long enough in the discomfort between the two opposites, the third possibility can show up. We just don't like the discomfort correctly. Oh, maybe I already said this. Oh, anyway. And what I'm also seeing, and why I also wanted to talk about my grandmothers, which I always want to talk about, is that in this case, I got deeper into the understanding of how this tune works and what's possible with this tune because of how Edith talks about music, that people have to sing, someone has to keep them together, and that's why you play. In other words, music of service to others. In service to others, as leadership, however you want to look at it. And because I was building this for someone else, because I was addressing this problem as in not, well, what's going to make it easier for me, but I was addressing it as, how can I make this simple for others? How can I lower the bar to entry to this song for others? That was also the factor that helped me create the tension or the release or whatever it was that allowed me to solve the problem for others. Once I solved the problem for others, then it opened up all new possibilities for me in how I might play this tune. And therefore, and that is why I call this session Stretto. And thank you so much for being with me here today. And thank you for people who write, and thank you for those who said, we want to hear more harp in Jung at Harp. And Kathleen will be back next week. Thank you so much. And until then, go forth and harp on the good things in life. And I hope you will go and you can listen to the Jung at Harp podcast on all your favorite podcast apps now. So we'll love to hear from you. And thank you so much. Farewell.
Visit jungatharp.com for show notes, contact links, and to follow the ongoing conversation. That's Jung, as in Carl Jung, the famous psychoanalyst, and harp, as in the many-stringed instrument.